from the Cajun capital of the world.
I'm the average Lafayette, Louisiana kid.
See, I'm back on my...
Hey, fellas. Hey, Raging Review said, congratulations. Say what's up, y'all. Yeah!
People that have courage don't have no extra gene. There's no difference in you. The difference is, are you going to sit down when it's time to stand up?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to another edition of Ragin' Review. Coming in hot tonight on a big Thursday at 6 o'clock. Not our typical time that we come on the show, but I am here, even though I was hiding for just a second. I am here, and we're going to bring to you some great content. Earlier today, Jerry had the pleasure of sitting down with JMU, or I should say the voice of JMU athletics, Mr. Dave Riggert, who gave us some great insight on the James Madison Dukes. Of course, last night on our weekly episode, we had a member of a JMU podcast on. He was awesome, Michael Evangelista with JMU Sound Off. Now we have the voice of JMU, Dave Riggert. So we'll take a quick time out. We'll thank our sponsors. When we come back, Jerry, we'll talk to Dave, give us some insight on the Dukes and what to look forward to this season. We'd like to thank the following partners who make Ragin' Review possible. Our title sponsor, the Best Stop Family Market, with locations in Katy and Baytown, Texas, Toledo Bend, Karen Crow, and of course the official location opened in 1986 in Scott. Visit the Best Stop and ask about the Ragin' Review tailgate platters. Gulf Coast Bank, title sponsor of the Tailgate Show every Saturday, 3 hours before kickoff. Planet Radio 106.7, Lafayette Roofing, The Yard Goat, Yes Please Branding and Marketing, Old Time Grocery, Stride Safety Solutions, Eat Lafayette brought to you by Lafayette Travel, Ragin' Hydration, and Dr. Brett Venable at Recovery Chiromed. And we'd also like to thank our Patreon sponsors listed here. For only $2 a month, you too could have early access to uncut interviews before they air here on our shows. You also get an exclusive Patreon icon next to your name on Cajun Threads, the official message form for Ragin' Review. If you are interested in joining as a Patreon, visit us at patreon.com/Ragin' Review. Thanks to all of our corporate and Patreon sponsors for making this show possible.
All right, guys, I'm here with voice of the JMU Dukes, Mr. Dave Riggert. Dave, how are you, sir? Ready for some football this weekend? First matchup between the two schools?
I've been waiting for this one. This is the last team that JMU has not been able to play from the West Division of the Sun Belt. We played everybody else, but not Louisiana. So finally excited to play the Cajuns up here at Bridgeport Stadium. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that was kind of a game we had circled on our calendar as a very unique game for us for that reason. We always know that JMU has been a powerhouse in the FCS. We were very excited when it came to the conference because of the fact that, we know they bring a winning tradition. At the same time, we know that it's kind of hard to win over there. So we've kind of had our little topsy-turviness of the first 5 games. So we're kind of like, man, it's great that we have the bye, but at the same time, it's like, oh, we got to go to JMU, so it's going to be a challenge. But before we talk a little bit about the game, tell us a bit about yourself, Dave. You're the voice of the Dukes. How long have you been the voice of the JMU Dukes? Talk a little bit about your background and how you were able to come in to this role.
This is my 5th season of doing games at JMU. It's been kind of a whirlwind since when I got here. I came in the fall of 21, and that was their last year in FCS. So there was some talk when I first got to town, and it was kind of a whirlwind too, because I came in the third game of the season and then just kind of rolled the rest of the way, made to the semifinals of the playoffs. But up until that point, again, being an FCS power, as you talked about, in contention for national championships every single year. And there was some buzz about, hey, there's some talk about the Sun Belt expanding. And this is when Oklahoma and Texas announced that they were going to move to the SEC. And then that kind of that was kind of the dominoes that started to fall. The Sun Belt was looking to expand, and obviously JMU jumped on board with ODU and Southern Miss and Marshall, and it's been great. But the job moved from an FCS job to an FBS job in a matter of months for me, so it certainly worked out, and it's been unbelievable here. They care so much about football and all their athletic programs here that it's been probably more than I could have even asked for coming here, but. It's been great. I was in the Midwest my entire career before this. I was working in St. Joe, Missouri before this at a Division II school, Missouri Western, for almost 10 years. Before that, I was in Salina, Kansas, doing some NAIA and high school stuff at Kansas Wesleyan. So just kind of continue to go up another level, going from NAIA to Division II, not to Division I, from FCS to FBS. But it's been a lot of fun, a lot of hard work, grinding through all of it. But I grew up in the Midwest, so this is the first time when I moved out here, the first time that I've ever been on the East Coast. But it's been great. It's been great for my family and I. And again, I was a kid that grew up in a small town in Nebraska. Never thought I'd be calling JMU Dukes games here in Harrisonburg, Virginia, but it's worked out.
So you grew up with that Tom Osborne, Nebraska
I
team.
did.
I'm sure that was like religion up there at the time with Tommy Frazier in those early 90s, late 90s. Well, actually, though, throughout the entire 90s, I mean,
Yep.
Nebraska was such a powerhouse in the Big 12. But it's funny because I always appreciate, even though I don't follow it too much, the NAIA D2, D3 football in the Midwest, like Kansas, Oklahoma. That's some pretty serious football down
It
there,
is.
even though it's a smaller league or smaller
For sure.
division. I'm sure that's taken very seriously, especially for a lot of junior colleges and players that want to maybe move up to the FCS or FBS level.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And you mentioned growing up in Nebraska. So I went to school there too. I did track and field at Nebraska. And while I was there, I was roommates with some of the football players. And while I was there in the late 90s, they won 2 national championships. So I was pretty good friends with Scott Frost, who obviously was the head coach there for a while now at UCF. But Grant Wistrom, Christian Peter, some of the guys that were all Americans during that time. But yeah, the early 90s when I was going to high school, that's when, again, we were always Nebraska fans. We've had season tickets growing up. My mom, when we lived in Lincoln before we moved to Superior, when I was 6 years old, had worked in a ticket office at Nebraska since like 1972. So she had season tickets, and they're still in my brother's name right now. So he still goes and still watches that. Again, I'm so far removed from it. I don't pay a ton of attention to it, watch the scores and everything like that. But it was a pretty good time to be a Husker fan and go to school there. But you're right. You know, when I was at Missouri Western, the Division II school that I was at, they're in the MIAA, which is one of the best Division II leagues in the country. Northwest Missouri State's won a bunch of national championships at the Division II level out of that league. Central Missouri is always good. Washburn and Emporia State that are in Kansas. And there's been a lot of guys when I was at Missouri Western. Greg Zerline, the kicker, who was in the league for a long time, he was at Missouri Western. Mike Jordan was a corner that was in the league. Jonathan Owens, who is Simone Biles' husband, played at Missouri Western. He's from St. Louis. So there's been a lot of NFL guys that have come through there. You don't have to be at the Power Four schools to make it in the NFL. And we've seen that numerous times. There's a lot of great talent and guys that could be playing at the FCS, FBS level at Division II. So that was fun to see. It was high level football. There's no doubt about that. But again, nothing really compares to moving up to this level and seeing some studs at this level.
Yeah, I felt like you got the fast track because you went from, you talk about NAIA Division 2 or Division 3, and then you go to FCS for one season. So it's like you passed the test for the FCS level, and all of a sudden you got to ride that ride with JMU as they moved up to the FBS level and ultimately into the Sun Belt.
And that's been pretty special because obviously the success that they had at FCS, but then to jump into FBS, no one expected them to be able to make this transition as smoothly, I guess, as they've been able to make it. Again, no one's had the success jumping from FCS to FBS like the Dukes have had, going 8-3 in their first year. Again, they were 11-1 in the regular season in year 2. Would have won the East both years, but weren't eligible to play in the championship game. So that I know that was frustrating around here that they were good enough to win the East and play for a Sun Belt championship and not have the ability to do that just because the transition rules was frustrating, but it's been an unbelievable ride these first few years in the Sun Belt and in FBS to see the transition and even go from a different coach. I mean, Coach Signetti obviously was phenomenal, and he was perfect for this transition because he had been at the highest level. He had been at the FBS level, so he knew the transition. He was perfect for this transition. He moves on to Indiana after his success, and then Coach Chesney comes in, and Jamie really doesn't miss a beat. It's been fun to see that transition from FCS to FBS and then from coach to coach. And again, there's a high standard here, and again, they hold everybody to a high standard to make sure that they don't drop off much.
I remember whenever all of that domino effect happened, I was actually on vacation when I saw the tweet that Oklahoma and Texas were leaving the Big 12 to go to the SEC. And I just remembered at the time, a lot of our fans didn't want to stay in the Sun Belt. We wanted to leave. We wanted to find a way maybe into the American or go somewhere else because we felt that there was kind of a default stature within the conference. And then when the domino effect happened, where those two teams left to go to the SEC, and of course you've got the Big 12 trying to go poach teams, and then that really massive tidal wave occurred, or the snowball effect occurred, whenever we found out that we were going to get Southern Miss, Marshall, and ODU, that was one thing, because those are three Conference USA teams, which automatically put us above Conference USA in perception. Mm-hmm. But then whenever we found out that JMU was interested, it was very unique for us because I could just speak for myself when I say this. A lot of times you're very hesitant, unless you're North Dakota State, you're very hesitant of an FCS program coming into your conference because you're like, what really do they bring? But then when JMU was interested, we already knew that JMU has a great budget, a big budget. We already know that JMU was successful in football. We already knew that JMU had some pretty prestigious other sports as well. Their basketball team had some history. Their baseball team was up and coming. Their softball team was unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And we're very proud of our softball program. So we knew right then and there that we're going to be kind of a natural rival. But I'll be honest with you, there was a lot of positive reaction from our fan base that JMU was coming as an FCS call-up. A lot of times, like I said, we're hesitant about that. But because of JMU's success, I think a lot of our fans were like, okay, this is a pretty good move for the conference, especially if there were any FCS call-ups, they would have been probably next to maybe a North Dakota State as the best option to move up to the level of FBS.
Well, and JMU did it the right way, too, because they were looking at joining the Sun Belt actually like around 2011, 2012. There was talk. So there's been this FBS talk for a long, long time. But they wanted to make sure that they had all the infrastructure in place, that everything was going to be pretty smooth like it has been. They didn't want to just jump to a league. And at that time, the Sun Belt was not what it is now. So, and they certainly wanted to jump into a league that was going to be competitive, that was going to be on a national landscape of things. And so they took their time. And I give them a lot of credit for that. And again, I wasn't here at the time, but there's been schools that have jumped at that FBS offer. Okay, yeah, well, we got to do it, but they don't have everything in place. And then it takes some time. It takes 4, 5, 6 years to kind of figure everything out, get your budget to where you want to get to, have your facilities where you want to get to. They built a brand new basketball facility here that is gorgeous, that they needed if they were going to make the move to a conference like this. So they took their time. They took about 10 years to really hone in on what they needed. And I give Jeff Bourne, the previous AD, a ton of credit. He was here for 25 years, and he did it the right way. And they were in the perfect position for when the league was at its probably best to join that league at that time. And again, it's been a great marriage. I think all of our teams love the Sun Belt being in this league. There's great regional rivals, as you well know. Obviously, we don't get to play the West and the East a ton, so we don't get to see you guys a ton. But all the regional rivals that you have in the East or West Division are going to be they've been phenomenal for us, especially seeing ODU all the time, and App and Coastal and Georgia Southern, Marshall. It's just been, our fan base loves it, and that's kind of what all the other big conferences have gone away from. When you're playing, Stanford's playing Cal, or Stanford's playing Virginia, and it's a
Rutgers. USC going to Rutgers for volleyball, or UCLA going to Penn State. That's
so I don't. Regional rivalries have been really good for JMU in this league, I think.
So with that being said, as far as for you, right? So you have to travel to all of these different places, and you get to call all these different sports and all these different games. How has your experience been as the voice of the Dukes since JMU's joined the conference, as far as broadcasting against these new schools, right? You're going to ODU, maybe coming down to Louisiana in the future, or maybe for other sports, or going to South Alabama, maybe going to App State. How has your experience been as far as that goes, and the reception that you've received?
It depends on who we play on the reception. If it's one of the teams in the East Division, especially App State, there's some choice words. Even
Get
if I'm
out,
just
out, out.
if I'm just the radio announcer, I'll walk by the student section and they'll have some choice words for me. So, but no, I mean, I joke about that, but that's part of what rivalries are all about and the fun of college athletics. But honestly, the reception's been great everywhere. Honestly, doesn't matter where we go. It could be ULM, it could be Louisiana for basketball a couple of years ago. It's been really good. One thing I've noticed is there's a lot of great people in this league at every school, whether that's other broadcasters, the sports information directors, other coaches have been great. One of my favorite events is the Sunbelt Media Days. When we go to New Orleans, I get to talk to all the coaches, and honestly, they're all willing to just sit down and talk to you and have a good conversation. I've had great conversations off the air with almost every coach in the league, and that just it makes it pretty special to have a lot of good people in this league that understand that they're all kind of pulling the same way and not trying to have a foot out the door and different things like that. So the reception's been great almost everywhere, and obviously JMU's had a lot of success, and with that comes some hate, some there's with especially the early success they had moving up from FCS to FBS. There's some teams that are maybe jealous of some of the success that they had. So they're always going to give their best shot. When we came to Louisiana a couple of years ago when our basketball team was rolling. We had beaten Michigan State at the beginning of the year. We had an overtime win against Kent State. They were ranked 18th, I think, when we went to Louisiana. And every game that we played in the Sun Belt, that was the biggest crowd of the year for that team. And it was kind of our traveling road show was drawing big crowds everywhere. And we do that in football as well. So it's been fun to see the brand of JMU become a national brand over this transition, because let's be honest, you can win national championships at the FCS level, but there's not a lot of recognition. A lot of people around the country don't pay attention. They don't know. Again, when you're in it, you think it's unbelievable, and it is. It's great football, but there's just not the national recognition. We've had more national recognition the last 2 or 3 years. We've had College Game Day come a couple of years ago when we were undefeated. Unfortunately, lost to App State, but still had College Game Day. So we're getting big crowds on the road just because the national brand has become a big deal at JMU, and it's been really fun to see that. And that's part of the recognition that we're able to get around the league, is that there's a lot of respect for JMU at every institution.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that about how the recognition you get at the FBS level. So for us, like, we were ranked a few years back in the top 25 in 2020 and 2021. Both seasons back to back, we finished 15th and 16th in those 2 years. And I remember back in the day, we didn't have as much success in football consistently as we've had in the last 15 years or so. And people would say, well, we need to drop back to the Southland Conference and go play McNeese and go play Nichols like we used to. Now, we were never in the Southland. We split from those schools back before Division 1A and 1AA were two separate entities. So we were never considered an FCS program, but there's some people that wanted to move back to that. And I said, well, okay, yeah, you move down, and yeah, you compete for an FCS national championship, but do you really get that recognition? So I'm glad you said that, because I'll be honest with you, Dave, I'd rather be top 15, top 25. I feel like more people pay attention to that than making a run in an FCS national title, unless you're like a North Dakota State that goes and plays Big 12 schools and beats them. You're not going to get that recognition that you would if you were a top 25 powerhouse at the FBS level, even being in the Sun Belt. I think you get more recognition there than making a playoff run in the FCS level.
Well, that's one thing that our fans, when JMU announced that this move was happening, that's the one thing that our fans kind of were just like, man, I'm going to miss the playoff situation, because again, when you got to the playoffs, and our fans kind of got bored with it, to be honest with you. The regular season was, okay, they're going to go undefeated or lose one game, and then now the playoffs are here. And the playoff situation, again, at the FCS level is pretty cool. 24 teams. That's just true bracket. It's a lot of fun.
Kind of need to do that at the FBS level.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. So our fans really said, man, we're going to miss the playoffs and all these games deep into November and December, and we won't have that. It's just a bowl game. But now they didn't understand the recognition that JMU would get, especially being ranked the first year and being in FBS, being ranked the second year in FBS. With all that attention, they're just like, oh wow, this is a different animal than FCS. Again, yeah, we love the FCS, we love the playoffs and all that, but the people really still didn't really know about us. I mean, a little bit, but not the diehards that only pay attention to FBS football. So I think that opened a lot of people's eyes. The money's different. Again, that's the one thing that I think our fans have started to realize a lot more. The money's just different at FBS because when you're hosting FCS playoff games, you're still, I mean, you're having to pay for all that. You're not getting paid by the NCAA to do all that, so you still have to get that money, and you're not making money in the FCS playoffs. You're making money going to a bowl game, and so I think that's been a big eye opener for our fans that were kind of clamoring when they first made the move. Oh, we're going to miss the playoffs and things like this, but I think it's all worked out well.
Yeah, I was gonna say because FCS schools naturally have smaller athletic budgets as a whole. JMU was kind of an outlier there because JMU has money, but if you look at most of these FCS schools, a lot of them average around anywhere 15 to 25 million in athletic budgets, maybe, and that's a rich FCS school. So it's, I think for JMU, I understand why they would make the move. I'm not gonna lie, a few of our fans got into it on social media, including us. We like to bicker and banter a little bit because some of the JMU fans, with that early success, some of them were talking about leaving the Sun Belt and going to the American, and I'm like, guys,
fans are not realistic sometimes.
We welcomed you into our conference. At least thanked us for a few years before leaving,
Yeah.
And so no, we got into it, but it's all in fun, and I can understand when you have that type of success, when you move up to a level, I can understand. A little bit of arrogance comes in, but that's okay. Look, we act like that too sometimes when we win, so totally understandable there. But so let's talk a little bit about the Dukes football team right now. 4-1, only lost to Louisville. Pretty competitive game. I watched that game, and JMU gave Louisville all they could, playing in a hostile environment. Few plays here and there made a difference. But I guess the question is now, with the preseason expectations, a lot of people had JMU and Louisiana playing in the conference championship before the season. Hopefully we can hold our end of the bargain by making a run starting this Saturday. But compared to the preseason expectations, again, 4-1 record right now, what kind of reaction have you seen from the fans and supporters as far as reaching the expectations so far as opposed to what was expected going into the season?
Well, you kind of mentioned how our fans are with the the expectations that they have and reality are sometimes very different. And so I think the expectation every year is that they're going to go undefeated, win the Sun Belt, and play in the college football playoff. That's the expectation, I think, for our fans every single year. And again, you want to have those expectations.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah,
there isn't.
Understandable.
But you have to be realistic also. And so our fans, it kind of goes week to week too. After the Liberty game, after the Georgia Southern game, we're back, now we're on track to go undefeated once again. Then the Georgia State game happens, and this team is terrible. Alonzo Barnett can't throw the ball. It's just, we're terrible. We're never going to win the Sun Belt doing this. So our fans, they're kind of like the wind. They just kind of blow whichever direction that things are going. So, but this team, it's a really good football team. I think last week, honestly, is going to help this team more than anything. They did play well against Georgia Southern. They dominated the football game. It could have been much worse than the 35-10 score, and that's a good team. Georgia Southern went 6-2 a year ago. They just missed out on playing you guys in the conference championship, and then they bring back the most guys of anybody in the league almost. So that's a really good football team with a veteran quarterback that Jamie dominated and played really well against. They played well against Liberty the week before. So I think they got a little high and maybe I don't know if they got too overconfident or not, but Georgia State brought them back to earth a little bit. And I think they really were able to focus. They're focusing this week on some of those things that they struggled with. And the one thing they've got to get going is the pass game. They've established the run so well. The offensive line has only allowed one sack the last 3 weeks, and it really wasn't on the offensive line last week. So they've been averaging over 250 yards per rushing the last 3 games. So they've really done a good job on the offensive line to run the football. They've got a couple of good backs in Wayne Knight. They've got more than a couple, but last couple of weeks it's been Wayne Knight and Jordan Fuller. But they have not been able to connect the dots in the passing game. And that's something that's kind of perplexing right now. They were pretty solid against Liberty, struggled a little bit against Georgia Southern, had some big plays, but last week only threw for 74 yards against a team that they were last in the country in total defense coming into the game last week. So to be able to do that, there's some frustration. The wide receiving crew is almost entirely new, but there's a lot of talent there. So I think there's some concern from everybody just to get that passing game going. That's the one thing that I think can really kind of elevate this team to another level. But to be honest with you, the defense has been better than advertised. They lost some really good players off of last year's team. Jacob Dobbs is now a coach. He was a leading tackler for the Dukes a year ago, an FCS All-American at Holy Cross with Coach Chesney. Eric O'Neill led the team in sacks. He's playing for Rutgers now. Kyrie Mans was second in sacks, and he graduated. So you lost a lot of really good football players off of last year's team, but they kept a good core of Emmanuel Bush at nose guard, Trent Hendrick at linebacker, DJ Barksdale at nickel, and Jacob Thomas at safety. Those four core guys have been in this program for at least 3 years. And that's been big. I know that's the same thing for Louisiana. They've been able to retain a lot of guys, and that was big for this defense. Then they filled in the gaps, and this defense has been unbelievable. The most yards they've allowed in a game is 264 through 5 games. Right now, they're fourth, I think, in total defense. They lead the Sun Belt in total defense. They've been unbelievable. You mentioned the Louisville game. Against that offense with Isaac Brown at running back and Miller Moss at quarterback, the former USC quarterback, 2 plays gained 144 yards for them, and they both went for touchdowns in the second half. The other 51 plays went for 112 yards. So they dominated the football game besides 2 plays. They don't, again, you have to count the plays, but the 51 for 112 stands out more than the 2 for 144. That kind of got them beat. But if they could have had a passing game and the offense in that game, they win that game because they held to 12 first downs in that game and gave up a strip sack in the end zone and gave them a touchdown. So they really should have won the football game. But defensively, they have been better than advertised. They are nasty up front. They play about 11 guys up front to keep them fresh and healthy. The secondary's been great. They've got veterans back there, but the defense has been unbelievable so far. It'll be a huge test to try and contain this run game of Louisiana this week. But I don't think anybody saw this defense playing as well as it has so far this season.
Yeah, and that's interesting because, like you said, I mean, and we'll talk a little bit about. I mean, actually, we could talk about it now. I've always known JMU to have an offensive identity, and I feel like, since they came into the conference under Signetti, they've kind of run kind of a read option type offense or balanced option offense with a little bit of pass in there, and it's kind of shown. Like you said, you got Alonzo Barnett. He's kind of been a staple, it seems like, at JMU. He's kind of created his own identity in this offense. But one thing I have noticed is they're the dominating factor of their offense right now, like you said, is the rushing attack. Wayne Knight, he's got just under 500 yards, already has 4 touchdowns. You've got Alonzo Barnett. He's run for 4 I think he's run for a few touchdowns himself. But I'm wondering, you talk about the passing game because there's a lot of similarities between JMU's struggle to pass the ball and Louisiana's. I mean, against Missouri, we had 4 yards passing in that entire game. and then last week against Marshall, our backup quarterback comes in and throws for 125 in a quarter and a half and helps us win that game. I was kind of wondering, is the passing game at JMU, and I've heard this from fans over the last couple of weeks, with the rushing attack, is it expected for JMU for Barnett to go 200 plus, 2 or 3 touchdowns a game, or is it sort of an offense that's set up run to set up the pass, or is it the pass to set up the run? What is kind of that identity with the offense that the Dukes run?
I think honestly they're still searching for that identity, and I think they've kind of found a little bit that it's probably going to be lean on the run a little bit more to open up the pass. And that's something that, honestly, and you mentioned it, since they came into the Sun Belt, it's been a pretty balanced attack. They've had really good quarterbacks. Jordan McLeod obviously was the player of the year one year. Todd Centeo was the offensive player of the year. So they've had really good quarterbacks that can do multiple things. Last year, Alonzo Barnett was phenomenal. He had 26 touchdown passes and only 4 interceptions. Also ran for 450 yards, whatever it was, and led the team in rushing touchdowns. Then he tore his ACL. So there was just some unknown coming into this year to kind of see what this offense was going to be, because they brought in Matthew Sluka, and then they went with a 2 quarterback system in the first couple of games, and it didn't work exactly how they wanted it to work, and they really haven't used it since. A little bit of Matthew Sluka, but he's only played, I think, 4 plays the last 3 games, and it's all been runs. So they've kind of settled in on Alonzo Barnett, and they want to get it more balanced than what it is right now. It's probably too run heavy, but I think that's kind of been their identity, and that's what they have. They've got 5 talented running backs. A couple are banged up right now, but Jordan Fuller, he scored 44 career touchdowns at Holy Cross, is second all time in rushing touchdowns at Holy Cross. This coaching staff obviously knows him well because they coached him there. Wayne Knight has come into his own. He's been phenomenal here so far this year, but George Pettaway's been banged up. Iowa Day's been banged up. Joby Mallory's been banged up, and all 3 of those guys have been great at times. I mean, George Pettaway led the Dukes in rushing a year ago, Joby Mallory is a guy that had a 100-yard game and against Marshall, the last game of the regular season last year. Io had 84 a couple of weeks ago against Liberty. So all guys that are capable of going for 100 yards at any given time. So when they have them all, they're very healthy and they're very talented and they can get all those guys involved. So that's a challenge for the coaching staff too. But that's kind of, I think, with the offensive line and the backs that they have, that's kind of been the identity. But they've got to get the passing game going, and I think they will. I think it was kind of an anomaly last week because they were so out of sync. There was no energy in the building last week at Georgia State, and it's just a different place to play. It's like a hard place to play, and I think they're going to learn from that. I like this wide receiver core against a lot of guys with a lot of talent that no one's going to take the top off the defense. They don't have a burner out there really, but they've got a lot of possession guys, a lot of guys that have played a ton of snaps in college football, not at this level. A lot of FCS guys. The three starters all were starters at Richmond and Villanova last year, the last few years, but they've been really productive. So that's the one thing. It doesn't matter. We talked about it earlier. There's great players at Division II at FCS, and they've shown that they are very capable. So they're just trying to find that rhythm in the pass game right now, and they've had to lean on the run game, and it's no one's really been able to stop them. Louisville was, but that's a different animal. But no one's been able to stop the run game. Even late in games when teams know they're going to run the football, they've still been able to run the football and run the clock out and do a good job with that. So, but there's got to be some balance. They want balance in this offense, but the run has been able to is established itself right now as the dominant force on offense.
I've noticed that the guy with the most receptions so far is their running back, Wayne Knight. He has 16 receptions, 115 yards. Most of his touchdowns come on the ground. But I noticed another guy, Landon Ellis, 13 receptions, 183 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then one of the things that we like to joke about at UL is throw to the tight end. You got Lakota, last name Dupree. 8 receptions, 107 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So it looks like they spread it around. I mean, if your running back has the most receptions, and then you've got some receivers with some decent reception numbers, and then your tight end is scoring 2 touchdowns already. I mean, I would think that they spread the ball around a little bit to where our coaching staff is going to have to key on everybody on that offense, even with the struggle of the passing game so far.
Yeah, for sure. They don't target just one guy. There's not just one standout. I think all the receivers, Jalen Sanchez in the slot, Nick DeGennaro is the other one that's starting for them right now. But then they play a lot of different guys. Isaiah Alston's a transfer that came in from Iowa State. He was at Army. Mikey Scott's a true freshman that started game 1 and is getting a little bit more action here the last few weeks. Smoke Collins is a kid that is a Division II transfer that came in, and he's getting some run right now. So Braden Wisloski was at Maryland. He's over here, another slot receiver. So they play a lot of different guys. So it's not just one guy. I think Landon Ellis probably is, if there is a go-to guy, he's probably the receiver that's the go-to guy. He's a bigger receiver that can make the contested catch, but hasn't really got going so far this year, getting 2-3 catches per game. But Lakota Dupree's a guy that's really stepped up. He was a defensive end last year at Charlotte, and they recruited him to Holy Cross a few years ago when he decided to go to Charlotte to play defensive end. And they wanted him as a tight end there. And when he got in the portal, they wanted him as tight end here. He's just when they called him, they're just like, hey, sorry, I know you're playing defensive end, but we want you as a tight end. So they saw, and his transformation from when he got here in January to now has been pretty remarkable. He's come a long way. He played tight end in high school, and his brother played tight end in Alabama last year. He's on the Patriots practice squad right now as a tight end. So he knows the position, but playing defensive end for a couple of years, you get away from it, but he has come into his own. He's kind of become the go-to guy as far as that tight end room goes, and they play 3 of them. But he's probably made the biggest gains here of late, and he's had, I think, 6 catches the last couple of weeks and a couple of touchdowns.
That's very difficult. That's a difficult transition going from defensive end. I know there's a lot of hybrids these days and sort of those multiple sets on defense, but that's a tough transition from going from a defensive end to a tight end. I mean, that's two totally different
defensive
positions.
Mindset to play offense. He likes to celebrate and has that high motor, but he has that defensive mentality playing offense now, and it shows up in the blocking game too. But he's been a guy that's really stepped up.
Being a Saints fan, I can only imagine Cam Jordan going out for a pass, I'm sure that would look very, very unique, but hey, if it works, obviously his stats speak for themselves. So I'm sure I'm sure Duke fans are loving it, and I'm sure it's fun for you to call that. Let's talk. You mentioned their defense. I'm looking at the stats right now. I mean, look, this is nothing short of impressive. I mean, they've given up 79 yards a game, which is interesting to me because our uniqueness on our offensive attack is the rushing game. So that's going to be a fun matchup to watch. Also, I noticed that They've given up 4 passing touchdowns, which is not too bad. I mean, I'm looking here, total yardage, 217 yards a game that this defense has given up, which is, like you said, I mean, that's very impressive. The most you said, I think, was 264, that's very difficult to do through 5 games. Talk a little bit about their scheme. I'm looking at some of their player stats, and I'm very impressed to say that you look at some of these guys on defense, and you look at someone like a Trent Hendrick. I mean, he's already got 38 total tackles. He's got 5 tackles for losses. Looking at guys like Gannon Weathersby, he's got 30 total tackles. Tyler Brown, 23 total tackles. You've got multiple players with interceptions already. And you got a bunch of players here on defense with tackles for losses. I'm kind of wondering schematically, like I said, Louisiana is kind of like JMU offensively. We do run more of a balanced attack. We like to run first. What type of scheme does JMU's defense run as far as the matchup going into this weekend? Do they put 7-8 guys in the box? Are they more of a pressure type defense? Do they play zone? Is there secondary more man coverage compared to zone? What, schematically speaking, based on these stats, what has worked for them to allow them to be so effective right now?
Well, as most teams, they're pretty multiple. They'll base out of 4 down front. They're usually a 4-2-5 defense. But the one thing that they do is, and I think even Coach Desmo talked about this in his press conference earlier this week, is that, they'll base out of a 4 down, but sometimes they'll bring a defensive end and kind of stand him up behind the other 3 defensive linemen, kind of for a 3-3 look a little bit, and then he'll kind of roam and do different things. He'll come sometimes, he won't come other times. But what they do is get their safeties and their nickels involved a ton in the run game. They bring a lot of pressure. This is a team that's going to pressure the heck out of Louisiana. They just bring a lot of pressure. Trent Hendrick had a 2.5 sack game a couple weeks ago because he kept blitzing and Georgia Southern couldn't handle it. And he's a really good blitzer. Ken Weathersby is the same way. But Jacob Thomas, he's kind of the do-it-all. He's their strong safety. And as I mentioned, he's a 4-year guy here. He had offers to go other places. He could have gone other places, and he loves JMU. He's a Virginia guy. He and Trent Hendrick both came in the same year. They're both 4-year guys, have been starters the last few years. And there's no doubt they're the leaders of this defense. And they put them in very advantageous situations to pressure and get after the quarterback, get after the run game. But Jacob Thomas is a guy that has played free safety, strong safety, but they've got him in this strong safety position where he's on the edge a lot. They really trust the secondary on the back end, and they trust that they're going to get to the quarterback so that you don't have to cover for a long time. It's a team that had 7 sacks against Georgia Southern, a team that had given up 4 sacks the entire year in 4 games. So they're very exotic in what they do. Coach Hitchler, it's fast, it's physical, and they always want to talk about just being the more physical team. And this defensive line has done a great job of really establishing themselves. And as I mentioned, they play about 11 guys in the defensive line, but they're always going to bring pressure. That's something that they do a ton of, and not just on 3rd down. A lot of teams will wait till 3rd down and then bring the pressure. They're going to get kind of exotic on 1st and 2nd down too, but they're always going to be aggressive. There's just no doubt about that. And that's been the one thing. It hurt them with those 2 big plays I talked about against Louisville. They became aggressive, and then it popped for big plays. But they lead the country right now in the least amount of 20-yard plays allowed. So they lead the entire country in not allowing those explosive plays. And obviously, all coaches talk about explosive plays. If you can get those, boy, you can get your offense going, generate points, and that leads to touchdowns or is a touchdown. They've been able to contain the explosive plays. They lead the country in that category right now. I think that's been the biggest thing, to be as aggressive as they are with blitzing a ton, bringing safeties, bringing corners, and not allow big plays. That's been a tremendous recipe for success on defense. But they will be very aggressive. And sometimes a lot of times when you get a run formation, if you get a 12 personnel, 13 personnel with 2 or 3 tight ends, they'll bring a corner off the field, bring another linebacker on, so it's kind of a 4-3, and move their nickel DJ Barksdale, who's very, very talented and can play multiple positions. They bump him out to corner, so they trust him to just bump out to corner, and they'll play their 4-3 and bring a little bit more size in with Drew Spenagati, another linebacker. So they do that quite a bit, depending on what personnel comes into the game. So it's multiple, it's aggressive, it's physical. They are downhill all the time. But again, they're not allowing the big plays, which has again, that's hurt them a little bit in the past with how aggressive they've been. It has not been this year. It's been pretty phenomenal to see what they've done on that side.
That's kind of what Coach Des said about JMU's offense. Ironically, he said, one of the things about JMU's offense is you can't let them make the big play. And I think that's kind of the overall arc of college football in general and football in general is not giving
I
up the
agree.
big play. And I think I like to call it dink and doink, the dink and doink, the 5 yards per play. As long as you score on it, it works. But a lot of times that big play can break somebody's back pretty quickly, can hurt momentum,
No doubt.
and can change the overall course of the game, which makes sense as to why JMU is 4-1. Of course, the 4 wins, not giving up a big play, but then, like you said, giving up 2 big plays against Louisville, which ended up giving them a loss. So that totally makes sense. And no, I definitely understand why the defense has been successful as they have. And of course, running the defense and offense. Let's talk a little bit about head coach Bob Chesney. You mentioned him early on. I'm kind of wondering. He's 13-5 overall. He's got a bowl win. It seems like he's kind of fit into the JMU culture and expectation already. When you replace a guy like Kirk Cignetti, who basically put Indiana of all teams in the college football playoff, you lost a good one, right? And it seems like Coach Bob Chesney, he comes from Holy Cross. And, Holy Cross, you don't think much of them when it comes to football, but he had a lot of success there. I'm kind of wondering, with the fan expectations and with the expectations or standard of JMU football, has he been a good fit so far at JMU? Has he been somebody that fans can say, I'm comfortable with him staying here a long time? Because now, let's be honest, we lost Billy Napier to Florida a few years ago. Most schools like ours, of course, JMU losing Coach Cignetti to Indiana, a lot of times we become a stepping stone, right? Where the coach comes in 3 or 4 years, they win, and then they leave, right? Do y'all feel like he can stick around a while? Is he somebody that has created enough success to where fans can say, I like him? Like, what's the overall perception of Coach Chesney trying to find that identity at a school like JMU that has the expectation and is vying for a conference title every year?
He's been the perfect fit. It was exactly what this team needed. Coach Cignetti did tremendous things in his 5 years here. There is no doubt. But Coach Cignetti does it one way. Coach Chesney does it a completely different way. It is a complete 180 in how you go about running a program and coaching and everything like that. Dealing with alumni, dealing with media, it's a complete 180 from what we were used to. And again, it works for Coach Cignetti. And again, I had a tremendous relationship with him. Tons of respect, love that guy. But it's just a different way of doing things. And Coach Cignetti has fit in. He understands the culture. He understands the expectation. I think it. I don't think he truly knew what he was getting into until some of the first games. Heck, in game 2, the first home game of the season last year, in his first year as the head coach, they played Gardner-Webb, FCS team, not a great FCS team, should win that easily. They were losing at halftime, and the fans were booing him and going to the locker room. So I think he kind of understood all of a sudden there, and they came back to barely win the game. He understood kind of what he was getting into now. A little bit different than Holy Cross, a little more media attention, a few more fans in the stands. But at Holy Cross, during his time there, they lost 1 conference game. So they were the cream of the crop. He did a phenomenal job at a place that is hard to win, that is a tremendous academic school, and he didn't deal with transfers. They had 7 transfers his entire time there, not in 1 year, his entire time. So they weren't dealing with that because it's just a whole different ballgame right there. And for him to be able to come in to adjust, have 64 new players in year 1, 54 players this year, and be able to kind of adjust to the climate that college football is and college athletics is right now has been pretty remarkable. And he's out in the community all the time. He's got the guys out in the community all the time. I think he's a great football mind. He really understands kind of the sports science of things as well. That's something that they didn't do a ton of before. So he's really trying to keep these guys healthy. And Chris Grotzky, who was with him at Holy Cross, has come in and done a good job with the weight training and all the catapult equipment that everybody wears now and the GPS and everything. So he's a tremendous. I think he's the perfect fit. And now it's just a matter of how long can he stay here, because Virginia Tech's open. He's on that list. So again, with the success that he's had, he began at Division III, had success. Division II, he had success. FCS, he had success. He's having success here at JMU, and if that continues, again, he continues to be a coach on the rise that brings in great coaches around him. They care about their players a ton. You can tell he's a player's coach, and that. The guys that I've talked to these first 2 years here since he's been here, they feel like he is able to connect the team unlike anybody else. And I agree. I have never seen it in my years of covering football teams or basketball teams or whatever. in my 20 years of doing this, I don't think that I've seen teams the last couple of years as connected as his teams the last couple of years. And it's so hard in this day and age of the transfer portal and NIL and all of that to really get teams connected. You see so many new guys come in every year, and can they fit? Is it going to be a challenge? And he does it seamlessly. He does a great job of developing players. There's a lot of guys we want to talk always about some of the new guys that come in. And I mentioned 64 last year. Well, some of his most important players were the players that stuck around that weren't playing for Coach Signetti, that played for Coach Chesney because of the development piece and trying to get them to just become better players and fit his system the way it should work. So he's done a tremendous job. I think hopefully he stays around for a long time, because if he can, I think he can build something and just not build something, but continue the success and the tradition and the history that this place has.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you bring somebody that can bring a culture in, obviously, I'm sure is very beneficial, especially for the long haul. I mean, this is such a transactional environment that we're in college sports today with the portal and everything like that. I mean, we're dealing with it too, just like any other school. But no, I'm sure that's great for JMU. I'm sure the fans with the expectations, that definitely benefits a coach that brings that type of culture in. And speaking of culture, obviously JMU favorite to win this game. But I have to ask, last week, man, when I saw that score against Georgia State, I was like, because we had the bye last week. So I'm following everybody in conference. I'm following the conference race, even though it's still kind of early. But I'm looking at the scores, 14-7 late in the fourth quarter. And JMU has to get that first down to clinch the win. And I'm going, all right, this is interesting, because I was thinking a 30-point win. I'm like, okay, and I'm feeling a little more optimistic after our finish against Marshall. But I got to ask you, what overall? I guess first of all, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. Was it something? Was it just the fact that the team overlooked Georgia State? Was it just the fact that there was a little complacency in there? Was it the fact that Georgia State actually showed, like you said, it's a hard place to win there. We've had trouble winning in Atlanta as well. But a 14-7 win, I'm going, okay, either there was something that was exploited with JMU, or they just didn't play well. And with that question, should I be optimistic as a Cajuns fan? Let's talk a little bit about the Cajuns, right? We'll talk a little bit about that and what you see in Louisiana based on your research going into this weekend. As a Cajuns fan, should I feel a little optimistic based on what I saw last weekend? I want to get it from your point of view, Dave. I want to hear from your angle on what happened on Saturday, and should I feel good about that, or should I say, they actually got a wake-up call, now they're going to practice 10 times harder and I should be scared? How should I feel, Dave, going into this Saturday based on last week?
Middle. I'm hoping it is a wake-up call, but this is interesting, because I honestly think that game's probably going to help this team more than anything. I mentioned they probably got a little bit high and had a couple of really good football games and played well, and now they're going down to Atlanta. And they listed that crowd at 19,000. There was probably 1,900, maybe 1,900. I mean, it was a big crowd. It is what it is there. It's hard. There's a lot of stuff to do there. So there was no energy in the building. They were just complacent. And I referenced the Gardner-Webb game last year. So in week 2 last year, they played Gardner-Webb, and I think it was a 13-6 final. So very similar score to the Georgia State final. Well, 2 weeks later, after their bye week, they went and put 70 on North Carolina. So, and that was a bowl game.
I remember that.
That was a bowl team that had Omarion Hampton. I mean, they had some talent last year.
I remember that game.
The Carolina team is a little bit different. So I do think you can't compare scores. You can't go week to week. There's going to be down games. I don't care what team you are. You can be the best team in the world, and you're going to have a down week. And I give Georgia State a ton of credit. They came out and they had a bye week the week before, so they did some different things. They confused the Dukes a little bit and really played well. They played their best game of the season. And that's also a team in Atlanta that beat Vanderbilt a year ago, and then Vanderbilt goes on and beats Alabama 2 weeks later. So, again, that's a difficult place to play. Vanderbilt couldn't win there a year ago. The Dukes had some trouble. There's been some teams that have gone to that place just because there's There's just not much energy there. It's a challenge. They're not always great, and it is what it is. And they've got guys on their team that are good enough, and that's a matter of kind of what I talked about with Coach Chesney, bringing them together as a team. And they're a little bit more individual there because they've got guys that have SEC talent that have been to 4 or 5 different schools, and it is what it is. So I don't know. I think it's somewhere in between. I think JMU played down to Georgia State a little bit. So I think there's a renewed focus. I think this is what this team needed. They're a different team at home than on the road as well. So with a sold out Bridgeport Stadium, it'll be a little bit different animal, and I think they'll have enough energy to get things going. But I think it's somewhere in between. And you mentioned what are my thoughts on Louisiana? This is a really good football team. I know they've had some issues. Obviously, the injury at quarterback to begin the year was not ideal. They've had to kind of figure things out. Lunch came in and played great against Marshall. It was unbelievable. I'm guessing we're going to see him quite a bit in this football game. And again, that +1 run game, that's part of the thing that this coaching staff knows a lot about because of Matthew Sluka, and they had him at Holy Cross and what he can do in that +1 run game. So I think that does help that they kind of understand that, because it can be so hard to defend when normally you don't have to worry about defending the quarterback run game. Well, when you do, then it's a challenge, because then they can go hat on a hat and have some challenge. But the one thing, they've got enough talented guys on this team. They were preseason favorite to win the West because they've got a lot of good talent. I think of the kids. I mean, there's 4 or 5 guys on defense that have been here for 3 or 4 years. So there's veteran players that Coach Dez has been able to retain. And that's the hardest thing now in this day and age. Everybody wants to look at the new guys they bring in. Well, what about the kids you retain that have been in this program, that understand the culture that is Louisiana football? There's enough guys on both sides of the football that understand that. So I think this is going to be a really good football game. I think after a bye week, I think Louisiana is going to know themselves better. They're going to be a little bit rested. I think they're going to be ready for this football game. I think it's going to be really, really good. And you mentioned the run game. This will be the best team that JMU's faced to be able to run the football. They're going to stick with it. If JMU stuffs them a couple of drives, they're not going to go away from it. This is what they do. That's their identity. So, well, if the team sticks with it, how does JMU handle that? But if they get on early, then do they force them to pass? So that'll be the big key if they can contain the run game of, I think both defenses, if they can contain the run games of these two teams, because as we talked about, they're very similar in some of the struggles they've had here early in the season with the passing game. So I like this Louisiana team a lot. Talking to Coach Dez at the Sun Belt Media Days earlier this year in July, just a lot of veteran guys they're able to retain. Then you bring in some guys with that. We'll see how healthy they are, because, again, those 2 backs are as good as anybody. I think the running backs in this game on Saturday are as good as anybody at the group of 6 level, if you will. This is going to be fun to watch these guys, and this is going to be a knockdown drag out. I think these two teams are built kind of the same. They want to be physical. They want to be aggressive, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun on Saturday.
Yeah, I gotta say the bye for us could not have come at a more.
I think it came at a
time.
good time. Yeah.
I mean, I'm you. So I'm at the Marshall game 2 weeks ago, and with a backup quarterback and look, Daniel Beal he's a redshirt freshman. I've always said he's got upside, but he's a freshman. I mean, you just lost a 4-star in Walker Howard. He was kind of like the prodigal son coming back to Lafayette, and then he gets hurt against Rice, and you put Daniel in, and Daniel, he's doing as much as he can. But then we get down, he throws 2 straight interceptions. It's 34-17 against Marshall in the third quarter. And I'm sitting there going, oh boy, here we go again. This is what we've struggled with over the last couple of weeks. It's just not gelling, not putting it together. And then Lunch goes in. And Lunch was kind of like what Matthew Sluka is. He's kind of a package guy. You put him in on a few plays here and there. But he hadn't been as effective as Matthew was. I mean, Matthew has past starting experience. I remember when Matthew was at UNLV a year ago, right, and he did a great job there in Vegas. But Lunch comes in, scores a touchdown. Well, Dez keeps him in. And after that, the rest was history. It was probably one of the best individual game performances I've seen from any Louisiana player in a very long time. And that kind of gave us a renewed sense of hope. And I think going into the bye week, I said it in our post game at our tailgate. I said, the bye could not have come at a better time because, 1, our players can heal up. 2, there's a renewed sense of optimism now that you had that spark against a pretty decent Marshall team who beat you last year for the conference championship at your house. And you did it down 17. And then on top of that, you get a bye because you get an extra week to prepare for a good JMU team, right? So I think it's perfect. I'm hoping that, just from my perspective, The biggest concern I have against JMU besides their defense is their rushing attack. I mean, our front seven, Coach Des said it this week. He said one of the things we're practicing, I think it was last week during the bye, he's like, one of the things we're going to practice is how to tackle. A lot of the missed tackles we've had, we don't coach that. So playing against a JMU team where your bread and butter so far has been the rushing attack, I'm hoping we can contain that. And I think if we can contain that, I think the game can be really good. But then, we have to go. I'm wondering how our team's going to react playing in a hostile environment like Bridgeport Stadium. You guys don't lose there often. So they do a good job protecting the house. So I'm looking forward to this game. It's our first ever matchup. And it should be a lot of fun. I'm sure. I mean, how do you feel about the noon kickoff? It's 11 o'clock our time, but it's noon your time. Do you like the early kickoff, getting up early?
Like kickoff. Yeah, I do.
ESPN too, national TV, man.
I know the players and coaches love the noon kickoff because those guys hate sitting around all day waiting for the game and everything.
Right.
So I think they want to get up and get after it. So I like the noon kickoff and get back and watch some games later on during the day and not have to sit around all day. So the parking lots will open up early for tailgating, but yeah, it should be a ton of fun. You mentioned that the Dukes are 60-5 the last 9 years at home. So they've only lost 5 games the last 9 years at home. They've played really well. So hopefully they can continue that. We'll see this weekend. I think it's going to be a fun game. It should be a very competitive game.
Good. No, I hope so. I hope it's a great game, and I hope it's a Cajuns win. Maybe we can go in there. Because I'm going to tell you right now, it's one thing to beat Marshall the way we did. If we're able to get a win in Harrisonburg, that can actually start a run for us.
It could jumpstart something. There's no doubt.
Yeah, that can make it. That could definitely.
Kind of the same thing. A little bit the same way. Again, the Duke's already 2-0 in conference play, so they've got a little bit of a jump start. But these 2 weeks at home, Louisiana this week, and then ODU, who's playing tremendous.
They came out of nowhere.
They come up next week. So these 2 games, again, home games. These are humongous games here in this schedule that, all right, if you can get these 2 at home, which, again, you're going to be favored. You should be able to. You're on your home turf. Then all of a sudden you can start to think about some things down the road as well. Because, again, then they got a little bit of time off. They've got a Tuesday game at Texas State. That'll be a huge challenge. But,
that'll be
again,
a challenge,
they've got a stretch here of these 3 games, Louisiana, ODU, Texas State, that if you can somehow survive these, then you can start to peek into the horizon of what could be down the road. So again, this starts this stretch of some really big, important games, and especially these 2 at home.
For sure. Okay, so real quickly, we have some Louisiana fans traveling up to Harrisonburg. I'm sure for most of them, it'll probably be their first trip there, unless they maybe went for a baseball game or a basketball game or somewhere in the past. Because I know we have played JMU in basketball on the road before they joined the Sun Belt. Just tell some of Cajun Nation, when you're in Harrisonburg, what are some things to do, where to go eat, what kind of sightseeing they can do before the game? What are some cool stuff in town?
Well, it's a cool area. It's called the Shenandoah Valley. So we're in a valley. There's mountains all around us. So the Appalachian Mountains are to one side, the Blue Ridge Mountains are to another side. So, and they're within a few miles. I mean, you can go 10 miles outside of town and you're in some mountains, and you can get some scenic views where you can look down on the valley. It is gorgeous. So if they get a chance to do that, I recommend that, because there's a scenic parkway that you can go drive and you can look down upon everything. So it's pretty cool. Great scenery around here. So that's the one nice thing about being here. We've got the mountains right in our backyard, but then like 3.5 hours, we can go to the beach if we want to. So it's not too far down the road.
That's perfect. That's like us. That's kind of like us in Louisiana. In Lafayette, you're in the city, and then you drive 5 minutes, you're in the country. You got a bunch of sugarcane and rice fields. That's awesome. Yeah. I didn't realize. I didn't know Harrisonburg. I knew it was mountainous, but I didn't know it was that close to the Appalachian Mountains. I always thought it was about a hour drive. So that's
great hiking around here. Some cool spots to go see. Jack Brown's and Billy Jack's are some places downtown. They kind of try to renovate the downtown a little bit. Some more bars and restaurants down there to try and get that going. A lot of college kids now go down there where they never would go down there before. So try to renovate that a little bit. So there's some cool places. It's a nice little small college town. Again, it's not. It gets really busy when the students are here. In the summers, it's nice. You can get anywhere in about 10 minutes, and it's not a big deal. But when the students come back, a little bit more traffic. But it's a true college town. There's no doubt. And they're going to be fired up. They love JMU. They love JMU football, and they'll be ready to go when the Cajuns come to town on Saturday.
Oh, I've seen the videos, him throwing the strings and the confetti and the toilet paper and all that in the student section.
Get it right.
The streamers. That's the purple stream. Look, you need that. You need that. That adds atmosphere to the stadium. And I know right now, I'm sure there's big talks. I think they were talking about expanding Bridgeforth Stadium. If
There's
I'm correct, I know on the other, kind of mimicking what's on the home side, right?
Yep. So that's the one thing. It's always been the home side is built up, nice press box, a lot of stands. It's kind of wrapped around one side, and then the other side are the old bleachers that were there when the stadium was first built. So it's not really symmetrical, so to speak. So they're trying, and there are renderings, and hopefully this happens in the near future. Because again, since I don't know the exact number, but I think there's only been 2 games since moving up to FBS in the Sun Belt that they haven't been sold out. Everything else has been sold out since they've been up in the Sun Belt. And so there's a lot of demand. There's a lot of attention on the program. And again, that comes with winning. When you win, people are going to come. If they were struggling, probably wouldn't be talking about an expansion. But fortunately, they're winning, and they're so trying to kind of complete it, wrap it around, have some more suites. And they're even talking about trying to make, like a lot of schools are doing, or even professional teams, when you have your stadium, you have some restaurants and hotels and different things around the stadium where that can be used 365 days a year. It's not just the 6 home games you have for college football. And have some restaurants and some different shops that are right there, right on campus, that folks could come to, and have a bar and grill that's open all the time. So they're looking at trying to make it kind of a village, so to speak, and not just addition to the stadium to make it well worth it. So if they can do that, it'd make it pretty special. I think they want to get it to about, he's about 25 now. They'd like to get up to 33, 35,000, and that'd be perfect, I think.
App State has something similar to that. Heck, we have something similar to that. I think we actually downgraded our capacity from 41,000 to about 30,000, which was our original capacity. And let me tell you,
need, honestly.
Look, man, 20,000 in a 30,000 seat stadium looks a lot more full than in a 40,000 seat stadium. I mean, look, the last couple of weeks we were averaging around 23,000. 23,000 in a 30,000 seat stadium looks pretty good. So I definitely understand. I understand the demand when you're winning. I totally get it. So no, that'll be very impressive if they can pull that off. I do remember when you talked about in 2013 where JMU thought about moving up, because that was around the time when the Sun Belt added App State. We added Georgia Southern, Georgia State, and a few others. And I just remember at the time, the big talk for JMU was, hey, we're not ready because we're working on these projects. Once we're done with these projects, call us back. And then 8 years later, or 9 years later, the rest is history. And obviously it's worked out for everybody. But Dave, it's been a lot of fun. Before we let you go, on Saturday when the Dukes and the Cajuns kick off, where can we find you? What radio dial do we tune to listen to Dave Riggert for this game?
So the JMU Radio Network, our local station in Harrisburg, is WSVA 92.1 FM and 550 AM. We're on the Varsity Network app. A lot of schools are there now, and you can listen to about any college football game in America there at the Varsity Network app. So we're right there. Rocktownnow.com is our local website that you can go there. So multiple places you can find me, but I'm looking forward to this. This should be a lot of fun.
And then also, besides radio, you're probably on social media, right? I'm sure you post clips and whatnot. Where can Cajun fans find you on social media?
Dave Riggert on X or Twitter. It's DAVE and then RIGGERT. I think it's on the screen there. But my IG is the same, Dave.Riggert there on Instagram too. We'll do a lot of pregame stuff there and put some videos. I put out a video at Georgia State, and I don't know if this is good on Georgia State, but I put a video, kind of a tough angle, because we're almost in the end zone there, because the old baseball stadium. And I was painting,
Field.
And it kind of went, it's like 255,000 views all of a sudden, and they're kind of talking smack about Georgia State and everything. So again, but some views from my angle, from where we're at different stadiums, and we'll do a lot of that stuff on social media. So having fun with that.
That's awesome, Dave. Well, Dave, it's been fun. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And we're hopefully, come Saturday, we have a good game. And I'm hoping, I'm just saying this as a Cajuns fan, that you have a lot of good highlights to call. Hopefully you're saying a lot of touchdown Louisianas, but no, look, good luck on the call on Saturday. It's been a pleasure. Don't be a stranger. Come back anytime. Thanks again.
Thank you, Jerry. Anytime, my man.